for a very exciting Brunch with Bari. My name is Bari Newport, and I'm proudly the new producing artistic director at Gable Stage in Coral Gables, Florida. And I'm here with Christine Dolen, the longtime South Florida theater reviewer who previously was with the Miami Herald for 36 years.
That's right.
And now with ArtBurst. And tell us about ArtBurst. Let's start there.
Well, I happen to think that ArtBurst is quite a genius concept. It is an arts website that is funded by Miami-Dade County, and it gives wonderful working opportunities to arts freelancers like myself. Most of us have long histories of covering the arts in this region and elsewhere, and they pay us for the reviews and features and news stories that we write. And then they give this content to the Miami Herald, New Times, South Florida Sun-Sentinel, Biscayne Times, every media outlet you can imagine here for free.
So that's a very innovative model. Have you seen that replicated elsewhere?
I haven't. I know that there are some things in different cities, I'm not quite sure where, that work a little bit like that. But I think ArtBurst is quite unique, and I give credit to Laura Bruni of the Arts and Business Council, and also to Michael Spring, who I give credit to for so many things in the arts in South Florida, because it began as a way to preserve arts coverage at the same time that this region was just burgeoning. And newspapers were cutting back. The Miami Herald has no staff critics at all anymore, but this way, our work can still be published in the major newspaper. People who prefer to get their news that way or want to read the newspaper's website can do so. And these organizations have an ongoing documentation of their work, which is partly what I think we do as critics.
So that's, a very interesting topic of what the critic and where the review and the power of a review, why is it important?
Some artists might say, might wish that they weren't being reviewed. And I hope that I'm a sensitive enough person that I have empathy for how it must feel to read something that's critical of your work in a mixed or negative way.
Right.
But I think that the more ways that arts organizations can make contact with people who care about the company itself or that art form, the better. And critics while criticism is subjective, of course, it is also a little more objective than marketing materials, marketing materials put out by a company, because it's somebody who's been writing about the art form in this area for many years, who kind of knows the artists, knows the plays and the players, knows the missions of the company, and can place work in context. So if I want to come to Gable Stage, and I'm somebody who's a fan of Gable Stage, but I haven't made up my mind yet on a certain show, I might seek out a review. Or not. I might just subscribe and come to everything anyway. So there's a little bit of advice for arts patrons, but it's also, I always felt we were writing the history of a region show by show.
Exactly. What is the future of reviewing and critical analysis of performing arts?
That's a very key, important, and difficult to answer question.
I know.
Because I know the arts all over America are suffering certainly criticism is suffering. As in the rest of theater, there haven't been enough opportunities for writers and thinkers, BIPOC critics and Latino, Latinx critics. So that is changing in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
People are trying to think, what is the role of the critic?
Right.
The thing that we already talked about.
Right.
But if critics have only these, like their own blog,
Yeah.
for example, and they don't connect with multiple media outlets, I don't know what the future is. And also,
Right.
you know, I'm of the oldest generation of critics now. It's so important to bring along younger people
Yeah.
and mentor them
Yes.
and encourage them and encourage multiple perspectives when looking at the same piece of art.
Exactly. So first of all, I don't know if you know this, but I was a theater critic for Backstage West
Yes.
for many years.
Yes.
And I was editor of my high school arts
Wow.
newspaper. And
Wow.
really like learned so much about, first of all, the power of one's opinion.
Yes.
And just so much about, I just got to see so much work, you know, stuff that I personally probably wouldn't have
Sought out.
Exactly. And I learned so many companies, and I learned the breadth of companies over many, many years. And I've also lived in big towns and small towns, and seen over time how the newspapers have gotten smaller, how, and I've tried like so many different, I've tried to have TV stations, you know, review plays.
I know.
Especially in small markets, that seems like a...
Well, they used to here back when
Yeah.
I started, but that was in the mid 70s into the early 80s. They actually had some on-air critics who would do that, but that all went away, and it's a shame because so many people get their news from television.
Yeah, and it's unique in its way because it's not done all the time, and it's not a movie, so you know, and I think news is becoming more and more localized, even as it's more and more national. You know, I've seen and I've tried myself, and I just have not had the bandwidth to empower. Like I've been in places where there's teenage boards.
Oh
You
yes,
know,
yes.
and giving teens the power to be able to review. But I've also noticed, and I've noticed it here, I've noticed it everywhere I am, that just general audience members don't have the vocabulary to be able to identify what they like, what works for them.
It's
and what
either
they
a
don't.
thumbs up or a thumbs down.
And so I think there's like so much work to be done just in giving people a multifaceted, dimensional lens by which everybody can understand the art form, and therefore everybody can understand how much work, you know, went into something that you may not even like.
Right, and understand the artist's intentions and you know what the playwright's intention was and the director's vision and
and how a world premiere, you know, is not going to be perfect, but that there's merit in the fact that
encouraging new work. Right.
Yes.
Right. Oh, absolutely, 100%. The Broward Center, for example, does have a group called Teen Ambassadors.
Cool.
And they I guess for the whole season, they go to key things at the Broward Center, and they'll bring in artists and sometimes critics to talk to them about here's what you look for, here's what you should think about, here's how to express your voice, you know, so, but the Broward Center, of course, is a big entity, so it might be interesting if some of the smaller companies here would band together and create a group like that.
Right. I think even like empowering our subscribers and our audience with how you see things.
Yeah, absolutely, or encouraging them, like creating a place on your website to
share their
not just say I like, I don't like, but here's why this piece of art
Yes.
moved me.
Yes.
Here's how I related to it.
Yeah.
Here's how it set off this chain of memories, or
Right.
here's how I think it's talking about our lives today.
Right. Or
Whatever.
I really walked away from that, feeling uncomfortable.
Yes.
And
Yes.
why, and or that
Yes.
the story really didn't sit with me, because be
Right.
able to identify how the story could have been told in a way that would have been, more effective.
Yeah, and it's maybe it's a 2022 version of parking lot conversations. Since we don't hang around and talk to each other in this age of COVID so much, maybe we need to be able to express ourselves in safe, novel ways, and that's a great idea.
I like that. I have to tell you, I've been doing these pre-show talks.
Oh yeah,
It's
great.
my favorite thing to do, because I'm just so passionate about more and more and more people understanding how the cake is baked.
Yes. Yes.
But it's been really gratifying to see so many people gather
Mm-hmm.
and be inspired by the notion of the art form.
Right, and wanting to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
And, because other theaters don't really do that. I know the opera does that. They have lectures, and some other groups do, but I can't think of theaters who have a presentation right before a performance. So I think that's wonderful.
It's interesting. I spent a lot of my time, in that role at the Alliance in particular, where we also had a team board. And I don't know, it's just something that I'm personally very passionate about. I'm passionate about the theater company as citizen,
Yes.
rather than it's a place where shows happen.
Yeah, absolutely, because therefore you're more integrated into the community
Yeah.
in a meaningful, inspirational, controversial, exciting way.
And that's the whole thing. It's to serve the community.
Yeah.
So you know this community. You know it. You know it. You know it. You know the broader community, but you also know the theatrical ecosystem through decades.
Yes.
So can we start with just talking about your father and how you first were introduced to theater?
Yes, absolutely. May I show you a picture that I brought of him?
Yeah.
My father's name was Bill Hindman, William Hindman, but most people call him Bill, and I think he was billed as Bill sometimes. I'm not exactly sure what he's costumed for in this photograph. I always think like Merchant of Venice or something.
You got it.
Something like that.
Fabulous ring.
Yes.
Fabulous stick-on goatee.
Yes. But my father, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and my father worked in television there. He was an on-air personality and an announcer. He did a kids show. So
like a Captain Kangaroo kind of Saturday morning.
kind of, yeah. Yeah, he made and did puppets for it. So
wow.
His desire, however, was to be an actor. And he had done some acting when he was in college at Ohio State, where he studied Chinese.
Yeah.
I guess I've heard him speak Chinese, but he left when I was a little girl, so.
To pursue this dream?
Yes, and he got an incredible opportunity. He went to New York and replaced Jason Robards in Jose Quintero's production of The Iceman Cometh.
Incredible.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I don't know, because there was sort of personal turmoil going on around that. My dad kind of moved on with his life, but in the summers he would come back and do summer stock at a place called Playhouse on the Green, which was north of Columbus. And that was really magical. That's probably when I fell in love with theater.
Seeing him perform.
Yes, because he would do a different play every week. And he would, while performing that week's play, he would be in rehearsal for the next week's one. And we got to go to all of them and go backstage and get autographs and watch people do makeup and sort of fall in love with theater. So I probably, like all little girls, thought, oh, that looks like it would be fun. But then I realized I was too self-conscious and shy for that.
Mm.
And at the same time, I loved writing.
Uh-huh.
So I went to Ohio State myself, majored in journalism, kind of focusing my studies on criticism, and was hired by the Columbus, Ohio Dispatch. I was working on the copy desk, but they let staff members do reviews if they wished. So I started doing theater and film reviewing when I was in college.
Wow.
And built up enough clips that I was hired at the Detroit Free Press.
Cool.
Yeah.
What did your father think of you reviewing?
You know, he never expressed anything negative that I can recall about that. And
I wonder if he was proud that you're like, because like as a reviewer, you're part of the
ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he was, and it was odd when I first moved down here because he came in 1964 and was sort of part of the creation and building of a lot of companies here, and then here comes his daughter hired. Well, actually, when I first came to the Herald in '76, I was the rock music critic.
Do you love music in the same way you love theater?
No. No, but that's what I had been doing in Detroit.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
I mean, at that time, Detroit had huge music scenes.
Yes,
yeah.
It was wonderful in the mid-'70s.
Yeah.
Motown was still there, and the experiences I had were phenomenal. Bruce Springsteen did his Born to Run album, and that was the time when he was on the cover of Time and Newsweek the same week, which I don't know if that had ever happened.
Wow.
And the record company publicist, I was set up to interview Bruce.
Cool.
Yeah. And the record company publicist said, well, Bruce is kind of shy. It might be better if like you all did something and talked. So I don't know why I said it, but I said, well, the circus is in town. So I went to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus with Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. I did. I did. And Bruce was deliberately seated beside me. And I was shy and he was shy. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's on the cover of Time and Newsweek.
And there's elephants parading.
And there's elephants. So I turned to him and I said, Bruce, it's okay. We don't have to talk here if you don't want to. And he laughed and everything was fine after that. So we all repaired to this dive bar called the Lindell AC, which is the Lindell Athletic Club, but there was nothing athletic about it, and had cheeseburgers and did the interview. So it was pretty great. I had a lot of great rock and roll experiences too, which people who only meet me now as an older person can't imagine that ever happened.
I love imagining it.
It was pretty great.
I'm sitting here with Christine Dolen talking about her incredible experiences with Bruce Springsteen and the Street Band, and we're having brunch with Bari.
I also flew on Led Zeppelin's plane with the band from New Orleans to Houston for a show. Was
that just wild?
Yeah, it was.
Were you by yourself?
Yeah, covering them.
Wow.
I don't recall if there were any other press people there
Very
or not.
Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, it was pretty great. It was pretty great.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I mean, theater is, I guess it's wild in its own way. It's,
Well, I'll tell you, my come to Jesus moment was when I was down here again covering music, and there used to be a venue in Hollywood, Florida, called the Hollywood Sportatorium, which was way out west on what's now Pines Boulevard. And there was no like interstate system.
Oh.
So you would go out like a 2-lane road, and I had to cover a Kiss concert, which, and I was 29 at the time, and I got trapped in the parking lot for 3 hours after the concert. And I said, Chris, there's got to be a better way to make a living. So shortly after that, the Theater Critic left the paper, and I kind of did it on a trial basis for a while, even though I had plenty of experience covering theater. And
so so your dad came in the early 60s?
he came in 64, yes.
So what was it like? What was anything like here then? Everything was just developing.
Yeah, absolutely. There was the Coconut Grove Playhouse was kind of a commercial house at first, even though it had started with a bang with the American premiere of Waiting for Godot. I say Godot, you say Gatto, whatever.
I don't. I say Godot.
But it reopened. It had done plays beforehand, but it became a more important entity nationally by starting off with that play, which starred Tom Ewell and Bert Lahr, and made the audience go running off into the night thinking, what am I looking at?
Right.
So there wasn't necessarily this big, sophisticated pool of theater goers here.
And were there smaller companies?
There were some smaller companies, yes. There was a woman named Ruth Foreman who started a company in, I think she was initially in Coral Gables, then North Miami, and she was called Florida's First Lady of Theater.
Yes.
She was a very grand lady.
I've read about her, yes.
So there was Ruth, and the University of Miami did a lot of important work and trained a lot of actors who became successful, like Stephen Bauer and Sandra Santiago, and
I know there was a whole class of like
Ray Liotta.
Yes, around that time it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at that time, there wasn't so much professional theater, so the Herald did review their work. So I did see some of that, and then the Miami Beach Theater, the Performing Arts, was built.
The Jackie Gleason?
Yes, it was just called Topa at the time.
Got it.
It became Gleason later, but that's where a guy named Zev Buffman started his empire and started doing Broadway touring shows, which he would then send out around the country. So that started that. But and actually, the development of theater here, and I don't look only at Miami-Dade County, I look at Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, started in the 80s and into the early 90s with companies like Area Stage, which began on Lincoln Road, is now thriving in South Miami.
Which you know I'm just crazy about.
Oh, they do such wonderful work.
It's incredible.
And incredible training of young artists. There was a company called Acme Acting Company that was on South Beach, did wonderful, edgy productions, Sam Shepard, and you know, every contemporary playwright you can think of, which is sort of the mantle that Joe took forward, Joe Adler took forward with Gable Stage. Actors Playhouse started in the late 80s in a twin movie theater in Kendall that was destroyed by Hurricane Andrew. So now they have this beautiful facility on Miracle Mile.
Yeah, I love hearing Barbara's story
and
David's.
It's
Incredible.
stunning.
Yes.
It's really stunning. And M Ensemble, which is it's not just the oldest Black theater company.
It's the oldest
continuously running professional theater company in Florida, I believe. It started in '71.
Incredible.
And they've had many homes, but
it started at the University of Miami.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. But Shirley Richardson and Pat Williams have been with it since the beginning. And I think they're thinking about passing the torch, but they're not quite there yet.
Well, I just loved that production of Cowboys.
Wasn't it great?
So fun and also provocative.
It was.
And I was thinking about that. It was very poetic.
It was. And Leon Gray, who was in it and wrote it and directed it.
Yeah.
Now we have Zoetic Stage at the Arts Center. We have Slow Burn Theater at the Broward Center. We have
Miami New Drama, City Theater.
Oh my gosh, Miami New Drama.
Yeah.
I mean, they've come along
in a short amount of time.
So fast. and so impactfully with understanding the community that they're in and that they're serving, and commissioning art and celebrating those new works that you were talking about.
Everything I've seen here, everything my husband and I have seen here has been so unique to here, and everything's been excellent in its way.
Right.
And again, totally distinctive for here.
Yes, yes.
In a variety of ways.
Yes. And I think it's only getting more so, because I think initially theaters in each region were just trying to be great regional theaters.
Right, exactly.
Like regional theaters with a capital R, like the whole regional theater movement in America. But now I feel like it's giving more voice to the artists in a region and reflecting the stories of the people in a region. As you did in Maine, working with the Penobscot tribe. I just think that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes a company, the place that it's serving, the place that it is what makes the theater company unique.
Right, absolutely. Because you don't, who wants to go and see the same thing over and over again?
You don't, but I will say that, and this is something that I don't know that I struggle with it, but I certainly roll it over in my mind a lot too, that there's something to being able to give a community the Pulitzer winner for the year, and and to do your own production of it. I always kind of cringe when people say you're bringing, are you still going to bring the best off-Broadway, stuff? I'm like, I'm not bringing anything. I'm producing our own version of, I don't know, it has to somehow be a happy mix, right?
Right, absolutely. And people would not, if you did not do that, only the people who were wealthy and passionate enough to go to New York would be likely to see it. So,
right, exactly.
I mean, and theater, that's part of the magic of theater. It's not like a film that you watch and it's always the same.
Right.
It's the interpretation of you, the director, or the artistic director who has hired this team to create this piece. The actors, the designers.
The whole vision.
And so we're getting something, it's like bespoke. We're getting something handcrafted for us in a community. And if it won the Pulitzer Prize, it's obviously something that can be powerful, has something important to say.
Universally.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were on a fellowship at Stanford.
I was in 1984-85. In college, I had sort of, as an undergrad and getting my master's degree at Ohio State, I kind of devised my own focus on critical writing, but I definitely have 2 degrees in journalism, not in theater. And I think it was just my intense interest and focus and my dad's legacy that sent me down the theatrical path. But I had the opportunity to have a John S. Knight Fellowship at Stanford in the mid-'80s. And I thought, and it's like 9 months away from your job, with the promise that you'll get a job back, not necessarily that job back, but I always felt that I should have had a little more of an academic background in theater. So I spent those wonderful months studying Brecht with Martin Esslin and taking scenic design and costume design and working. I did a little bit of acting, which, believe me, I have no pretensions about my ability in that regard, but they seemed to think it was okay because I was in my 30s. So
everybody has to know how to,
do things.
Yeah.
So I felt that having that experience on the other side of the footlights did affect how I saw theater and my understanding of process. And I hope it made me not a softer critic, but I hope it made me a more empathetic critic and a more knowledgeable critic. So it was really wonderful, and I'm so happy that I did it. One of the most wonderful experiences of gaining that empathy that I ever had, Roger Reese, right after he did Nicholas Nickleby on Broadway, which I count as one of my top 5 theater experiences of all time.
My dearest professor from University of Southern California was in that, Alan Hendrick of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I just always looked at him like such a god because he was in that production.
I know, and I happened to see it at the same performances with another critic who I knew from the American Theater Critics Association. So we did the whole routine together, watching the play, taking the breaks, taking the lunch break, taking the dinner break, because it was 9.5 hours. And but Roger came to Florida State University to work with students after that, and that was such a big deal because he was coming right off the play that the Herald sent me there, and he allowed me to sit in on a class. And I had just done the Stanford fellowship. I don't know if I would have had the courage to do this had I not done that, but he insisted I could do that, but I had to participate. So I did, and what a genius he was, and what an artist he was, and
what an opportunity you have.
How is that not going to, in small or large ways, change me? So it's important.
Exactly. I want as many people to have that experience as possible.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So what advice do you have for me, and what do you see happening in this region in the next 10 years? Do you have that kind of foresight?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot down here, and I've seen a lot of theater all over the country and some internationally. So I kind of know what theater is like in different big metropolitan areas. I did a wonderful project, again in the mid-'80s, where I traveled for 2 weeks around the country visiting major regional theaters and seeing the work and talking to artistic directors. So I will always passionately believe in the regional theater movement and its evolution. I would never presume to give you or other artistic directors advice, because I'm an observer and I comment on the scene, but you're the professional, you know what you're doing. I would just say, continue to dream big. Don't be afraid to change, because that's the reality. We have to change. I hope that vision of a shared place to create work can happen. I hope we continue to get smaller, new theater companies that are reflective of the interests of people here.
Do you think the community needs a flagship, big, classic regional house?
I would like it if that could happen, but the farther out we've moved from the closure of the Coconut Grove Playhouse, with simultaneously the ascendance of the Art Center and its nurturing of Zoetic Stage and some other companies, and the growth of Actors Playhouse and et cetera, I'm not sure how deep the appetite is for it. I do think classic major, and by classic I don't mean just the work is classic, but a traditional large regional house could be a tremendous asset here. But I don't know what the will is for that. I used to joke when the Grove closed in 2006, and then it kind of went on for a while. I used to say, it will never open again before I retire. And people would say, sure it will. Well, it didn't.
Right.
And I sure hope that it still does.
So I've heard people in the funding community say that theater here has been traditionally underfunded.
I have never understood why the theater community here has not been more successful at getting out the word to potential arts patrons about how far it's come, how good the work is, how many really great artists are making their homes here now. I mean, I think the visual arts community, thanks to starting with Art Basel, has done that, and New World Symphony and Miami City Ballet and other entities. But I can't tell you the number of people that I meet, and I bet you have too, who say to me, oh, is there theater here? I don't know anything about theater here. Or they might know about one company, but not the whole spectrum of what's available.
That I run into, yeah.
So I just feel theaters here need to make those connections with potentially important deep pocket donors, because that's how not-for-profit arts survive.
Right, and that's how we keep it accessible to more people.
Right.
Otherwise, each ticket's going to be very expensive.
Right, but that, I mean, I feel frustrated because I feel that for now over 40 years, with everything that I've written, I've tried to help tell this story. And it's like, aren't you people listening? Aren't you reading? Don't you know what treasures we have here in this community? So,
do you feel like the people who are like, I don't know, is there theater here? Or do you feel like those people are going to New York to see theater?
Yeah. A lot of people, who are maybe seasonal residents, or they're just snotty about it. They think, okay, New York, Chicago, a few other regions have important theater, and nothing else matters. And I don't know.
It's kind of an old school way of looking at
well, it is. It's pretty insulting to all of the wonderful artists here.
Yeah.
I really believe in the South Florida theater community, and I think it can grow and should grow.
Yeah. I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Bari, for having me.
Oh my gosh.
It's been great talking to you and kind of seeing how the challenges are evolving that you're facing and seeing how you're approaching them. And thank you for letting me talk about myself and my dad.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm just like a sponge. I'm just trying to soak up as much as I can. So thanks for joining us. This was Brunch with Bari with Christine Dolen.